All right, welcome to another session of the Sales Edge and Business Chat Room. Want to welcome everyone watching or listening. And today we're going to talk about how to close sales over the phone, and I'm going to share three phone sales techniques. Okay, um, and believe it or not, one of the most challenging aspects of sales is actually talking to people on the phone, right? So we're going to learn how to close more sales over the phone. Now, I remember back when I first started my sales career, I did my first sales call, and I was talking to a prospect over the phone, and I was so scared and unprepared, and I really didn't know what to say. And in the call, I was like stuttering here and there, and the person got irritated. Basically, that person said, don't call me again. Don't waste my time. I don't want to talk to you, right? And they just hung up the phone. It was the worst call ever, right? So I remember uh, before I made the call, I was excited to start calling. I was up bright and early with good intentions, and I was motivated. But then after this person basically just shut me down and rejected me, my emotions were so down. I was so low. I was just done for the rest of the day. And I literally just like sat there and I thought to myself how bad that call went. And maybe some of you have experienced this as well, right? So if you're new to sales, even if you've been doing it for a while, you might have found yourself in a similar situation. And even if you do have experience, sometimes you do have these bad calls every now and then. We cannot escape from that no matter how good we are, how prepared we are, and how much experience we have. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my top three tips to basically become better at selling over the phone to close more deals. That's the bottom line, right? Now, this is going to be especially valuable for you if you're someone who does any type of B2B selling where you have to talk to somebody over the phone, right? You can be an entrepreneur, a salesperson, business development. It doesn't matter. As long as you're talking to someone over the phone and you communicate with them, you're going to get a lot of value out of this, out of our session today. And these tips I'm going to give you, they're going to be applicable to all kinds of industries, all types of, different products and services, because they're going to be universal tips that you can use no matter what you're selling. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and let's get into the three tips to sell more over the phone. Okay. So let's start with tip number one. So tip number one is going to be tonality when it comes to sales over the phone. Tonality is everything, and it can be easy or hard depending on how much you practice this. So I'm going to go ahead and give you an example. All right. So let's say I'm calling someone over the phone, and I sound, "Hey John, my name is Chris. How are you doing today?" So I'm kind of exaggerating, but if you've heard someone talk to you like that over the phone, you might laugh or you might not take this person seriously, right? Now, there's a big difference from how I normally am, which is, "Hey John, how's it going? It's Chris. Did I catch you at a semi-okay time?" Right? So it's a big difference from what you heard earlier. It was higher pitch. It was like fake enthusiasm. It was exaggerated. So what exactly is going on here? All right. The thing is, studies have found that when you're talking to someone for the first time, the major factor that will determine whether or not someone will like you is actually your tonality. So it's very important that we work on this. So it's not even about the words that you're actually saying, because if you cannot get your tonality part right, the person's not going to trust you. And if they're not going to trust you, they're not going to like you. And people, more often than not, tend to buy from other people that they like and they trust. And that's why it's incredibly important to be aware of your tonality and how you sound. Now, I need to emphasize that it's not about being fake, and it's not about trying to sound like something you're not. And you want to think of it like you're putting your best foot forward, right? The voice is actually an instrument where you can talk high or you can talk low, or you can, however you choose to talk depending on your situation. Now, when, even for me when I was younger, I used to talk a lot more, maybe a little bit higher pitch, and it wasn't really all that pleasant to the ear. And some of you might be saying, I talk like that, and I don't know how to fix that. So we're gonna go through this right now. All right. Now, not only tonality, it's about the way that you're saying it. It needs to have a bunch of energy. You need to have a bunch of confidence, and the energy needs to be oozing out of you and really almost inspiring the people that you talk to, or at the very least, catch their attention. Okay. Now, I also listen to and I try to emulate intellectuals, charismatic, and confident people, and the way they speak. So essentially, I'm not trying to be fake. I'm not trying to be something I'm not. The voice is an instrument. You can use a sound how you can use your sound, your tonality, however you want. And when it comes to actually how I sound when I talk to customers over the phone, basically I have three techniques, that I typically go to, and you can actually use this, as a foundation to figure out which one works best for you, right? So the first voice that I use when I'm talking to a prospect over the phone, and meeting them on the phone for the first time, I actually use my positive voice. So for the positive voice, I tend to have a little bit more energy, not exaggerated, right? I tend to have a little bit more energy. I tend to smile, and that smile is so important because it comes across the phone, and basically I get the person excited, or at least interested to talk to me and about my product and services, right? So sometimes I run into objections where things get a little bit more serious, or there's maybe a little bit of conflict and I have to overcome them. So I'll switch from the positive voice into my smooth voice. And so you want to think of the smooth voice as like, like a late night radio DJ voice, right? So I say something like, "Hey John, I understand that's a little expensive. Like you're saying this, and you might not have the budget for this right now. Does that sound about right?" So I'm just saying in an example of how I would handle objections, but you can kind of see the difference in the tonality, right? Now, the first one was, "Hey John, how's it going? This is Chris. This is the smooth voice. Um, the uh, the energy voice, right?" And then we say, "Hey John, how's it going? This is Chris." So that's the positive voice to get somebody excited. The smooth voice makes people feel calm, right? Like you can be trusted, right? Not that we cannot be, but we need to use this to bring that perception across. So usually I get them excited in the beginning, and then I use a smooth voice when I come into any type of conflict or sales objection. Now, throughout the sales process, you're using different tonalities, but the one technique that I really like to use is what we call mirroring and matching, mirror match. Okay, so essentially what that is you're observing their tonality, their pacing, and their speed, and the energy that somebody has, as and you're listening to it as they're speaking over the phone. So if someone has a lot of high energy, what I want to do is bring my energy levels a lot higher to kind of match them, speak a little faster to kind of match the level, right? Now, if someone's speaking a little bit more calmly, like, "Hey Chris, how are you?" And so I'm going to speak more calmly and say, "Hey John, thanks for asking. I'm doing okay." So basically, if you match their tonality, subconsciously what people will feel is that this person is just like me and he gets me, right? So when you make people feel that way, they subconsciously and maybe even consciously, they tend to trust you, they tend to like you, and it becomes a lot easier to communicate with them and possibly get them to a point where they're ready to buy, or at least take the next step in the sales process. So to summarize tonality, there's the positive voice, there's the smooth voice, and the entire time you want to mirror and match and kind of get close to their levels of tonality, their levels of speed, pitch, energy levels, so that you can build that kind of trust and rapport. And remember, it's not about being fake. It's putting your best foot forward and using tonality as a tool, as an instrument, in order to become better at closing deals over the phone, or at least talking on the phone. Okay, so now we're gonna go. We're gonna move on to tip number two when it comes to closing sales over the phone, and that's using the 80-20 rule. The 80-20 rule is also called the Pareto principle. So we use the 80-20 rule to ask more questions. So the 80-20 rule essentially in this context is that 80% of your results come from 20% of your actions. So taking that in asking questions. So when you're talking to somebody over the phone, what you want to do as best that you can is ask questions and talk 20% of the time. And you want to let your prospect talk 80% of the time. So pretty much they're talking almost the entire time, right? And all you're doing is guiding them into topics that you want to cover using these questions. So, for example, let's say you're talking to someone over the phone, and one of the first questions you might ask is, "Hey, John, so what got you interested in this call today?" or something like that. And John might tell you, "Oh, I have this big problem, and we were thinking that maybe you could help solve it." And then you want to get him to elaborate, and then they talk more and they talk more, right? And then you listen and you listen and you listen and you take your notes because they're going to tell you how to sell them. And then you can ask more questions and go a little deeper and say, "Hey, you know what? That sounds pretty interesting. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?" And they might talk a little bit more, tell you more problems, and you listen and you can ask more questions to dive even deeper. Now, so for example, you can say, "Oh, that's really interesting. Has this always been a problem for you guys?" And they talk a little bit more. And so you ask more questions, then you can go even deeper. And you could say, "Hey, it looks like you've been experiencing this problem or this challenge for quite a while. Have you done anything to actually try to solve it yet?" And they're going to keep talking more and more. And the reason why you want to do this, is what you want to do is during a sales meeting, you want to ask the questions to uncover the prospect's pain. And then with that pain, what you want to do is position your product and solution or service as a solution to that pain. And the most important thing to take note is that you want to ask questions to uncover a customer's pain, because the more you learn about them, the more you're able to position your product or service as a solution, and the more likely they will buy. Okay? So again, ask questions, talk 20% of the time, and let the prospects tell you their problems 80% of the time, and then come in at the end and solve all of their problems. Okay, so we're going to go into tip number three right now. I'm going to go into some actual tactical closing techniques. All right, this is it's so simple and it's so powerful. We all love techniques. We love to know exactly what to say, how to say, and things like that, right? And for me, it's really more about the mindset that we have. And the mindset is that we're here to solve the problem, and that's our job. Okay? So I'm going to give you some special techniques that I personally use myself, and I know that these will work for you. So let's say you're in a sales meeting and you're getting closer to the end of the call, right? And you really understand the problem to talking, because they're talking 80% of the time, and then you pitch your products and services, and then you show them that you can solve their problems. And then from there, you want to move forward with the deal and actually close that deal, right? So one thing that I do towards the end of the meeting is, I'll say something like, "Hey, John, based on everything that we talked about so far, is there anything else that you need to see or hear before you make a decision?" And it's such a simple phrase, I'll repeat it, okay? "Hey, John, based on everything that we talked about so far, is there anything else that you need to see or hear before making a decision?" So what I'm doing here is that after I did my pitch, I asked that question, right? So I'm trying to understand and get to the bottom of how interested John is in my product or service. Now, if there are more things that he needs to see before he makes a decision right there, because I asked this question, he's going to tell me. Now, That's if we have the trust and rapport, right? Now he might say something like, "Oh, I need to make sure that this fits in well with our existing software," or I need to make sure how long it will take before we can actually start to get it implemented and use it in our business to save time, to save money, whatever the benefit is. Okay. How long will it take before we actually get results? That's basically his question. Now, these are some of the questions, or maybe um, some of the objections that might come up. And this is actually a good thing because you're uncovering these objections, even though they don't sound like objections, right? And because John, or whoever you're talking to, is telling you these things because you asked a question, then you can answer those questions immediately and give the answers right. So once you ask the questions, John will tell you all the things that he needs to see or hear before they make a decision, and then you answer all these things again. The objection, you handle it, you answer, you tell him or you show him, and then you ask again. Okay, so John, we uncovered all the things that you want to, we covered all the things, that you mentioned earlier. Is there anything else that you need to see or hear before you make the decision to move forward on this and make the purchase? And John might say, you know what, nope, we're ready to go. Or they might say, you know what, there's one or two or a couple other things that we may need to talk about. And then you continue with this process, right? And that's essentially how you close, when you look for all the pieces that need to be unblocked. And then you get John to tell you what those pieces are, and then you unblock them. And then John is ready to buy. Now, in situations where, let's say, the person doesn't necessarily give you the clear answer and it's very vague, right? What I like to do is, I put it on a scale of 1 to 10. So I'll say something like, hey, John, based on everything that we talked about so far, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being not interested at all, and 10 being, hey, ready to buy now, where do you think we are on that scale? And then John might say, well, we're kind of at a 7 right now. Then I would say, hey, 7's not bad. I'm just curious. Right now we're at a 7. What would it take for you to actually get to a 10? And then John will tell you exactly what he needs to see or hear, or what you need to do in order to get to that 10. And then you just go one by one, inching closer and closer to closing the deal. All right. Then once you answer some of the questions, you take the temperature, and then you say, okay, so you ask again. Okay, so John, based on what we just talked about, on a scale of 1 to 10, on a scale of 1 to 10, where you're at right now, where are you right now? And then John might say, maybe we're at a 9. And then you say, okay, well, that's one more step that we need to do before we get to that 10, right? What is that one step that we need to do before we get to a 10? Then he's going to tell you, and you answer it. Eventually, you keep doing that until John gets to that 10, and he's ready to buy your product or your service. And then you ask him, okay, so we're at a 10 now. What would you like to do? And you want them to say, you know what, we're going to move forward on this. Let's do the deal. And what's the next step from there? And you say, okay, well, this is the contract. This is how we get you started, and we go through the buying or the contract or the fulfillment process. So essentially, all you're doing is just inching them closer, getting to that 10 on that 1 to 10 scale. And then once you're at the 10, they're ready to buy. And one thing about these closing techniques is they're not going to work until you get the first 2 steps, which is getting your tonality right and making sure the prospect trusts you. And you have to have that rapport with them. Number 2, making sure you're asking great questions and allowing the prospect to talk 80% of the time, and then you're actually setting yourself up for an easier close towards the end. And then you can use the techniques of on a scale of 1 to 10, what else do you need to see or hear before making the decision, and then from there you can actually close the sale. So with all that being said, in conclusion, those are my top three sales tips to close more deals over the phone. The first one was tonality, making sure you're building trust and rapport with the prospect by how you sound, and of course, you decide how you want yourself to sound to make it more pleasant to their ears. Number two, making sure you ask questions that the prospect tells you the problems, right? And then number three, use closing techniques to actually move forward with the deal. Now, there are so many closing techniques. I'll share more of these closing techniques, in future sessions just like this. And for today's session, we talked about that one closing technique to actually move forward with the deal. And I would encourage you, I would encourage you to practice this. Practice these things. Practice it every day. Implement them, and then take action by actually using it on a call. Okay. So with that, we've come to the end of our session here. On the Sales Edge and Business Chat Room session, and I want to let you know that I do appreciate you. Thank you for watching and listening, and I really hope that you will implement these things because I want you to get a lot of value and a lot of tips that you can implement and you can apply right away. All right. So thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And I want to wish everyone to stay safe and blessings for all of us.